Super Mario RPG hit store shelves in 1996 at the tail end of the Super Nintendo's life cycle. This collaboration between esteemed compatriots Nintendo and Squaresoft marked our mustachioed friends' first foray into the RPG genre. From there eventually sprung two spiritual successors in the form of Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi. Why only spiritual successors and no direct follow-up? While I don't believe anything concrete has been said on the matter, it's a safe assumption that the souring relationship between the two principal players following Square's decision to take its flagship franchise to the PlayStation with the release of Final Fantasy VII, along with the fact that Square owned the rights to the characters made specifically for Super Mario RPG, meant that it was probably easier for Nintendo to toss out the name and aesthetic trappings, crib some of the mechanics, and greenlight something new. And so, for many years, Super Mario RPG languished, receiving the occasional digital re-release, but with little to no hope of any sort of sequel, remake, or remaster in spite of the title's popularity amongst fans. That is, until 2023 when Nintendo partnered with developer Arte Piazza, best known for its frequent partnership with Square Enix on various Dragon Quest titles. Under their stewardship, the stage was set for Super Mario RPG to get its second chance in the sun with a full-blown remake for the Nintendo Switch. As for my own experience with the title, this is going to be my first go at a game/series that I really don't have much history with. I did manage to snag an SNES copy a number of years ago, but never got super far into it. Same goes for Mario's other RPG adventures. I spent a bit of time with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on GameCube, as well as Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga and sequel Partners in Time on the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS respectively, but the total number of hours played across all of these titles could probably be counted on one hand. Mario in general, while a franchise that I do enjoy, has never really hit the same high notes for me as it does for many others. To be honest, I wasn't even originally going to play this game. I've always been more interested in the Paper Mario series, but with The Thousand Year Door coming to Switch, I decided to jump into Super Mario RPG purely for the sake of seeing where Mario's RPG adventures began before eventually moving on to what I was really interested in. All of this made it that much more surprising when, within the quaint little cartridge containing Super Mario RPG, I found one of the most charming and well-paced RPGs that I have ever had the pleasure of playing. In the idyllic land of the Mushroom Kingdom, 'twas a day like any other. Sunshine, smiling hills, Bowser, king of the Koopa, swooping down in an odd flying clown car to abscond with our dearest Princess Peach, leaving one loquacious lad by the name of Mario to come to her rescue. And rescue he does! In what would typically be the game's climactic display, he knocks the Koopa from its perch and saves the day. That is, until an irresponsibly large sword pierces the sky, impaling Bowser's keep, separating Mario from his princess, and demolishing the bridge that acts as the only means of entry. What begins as a simple task to rescue Miss Peach gradually morphs into a quest to track down the 7 pieces of the Star Road, as it alone enables the wishes of those in the Mushroom Kingdom to come true. Without it, what hope does anyone have of fulfilling their dreams? At the same time, a man by the name of Smithy, hailing from Weapon World and responsible for crafting the blade that broke the Star Road in the first place, is busily building an army of living weapons. His goal? To conquer the Mushroom Kingdom. And thus, it is up to the crimson-clad plumber and his friends to save Peach, stop Smithy's invasion, and restore the Star Road to its former, wish-fulfilling glory. Ignoring my sweeping and melodramatic description, as you can probably tell, despite the genre shift, the story of Super Mario RPG very much plays into the family-friendly footsteps of Mario's other outings. It has the feel of a classic Saturday morning cartoon, though I'd argue it's one that folks of all ages can enjoy, in large part due to the game's excellent use of physical comedy. There are multiple occasions wherein, in order to work around Mario's muteness, previous events will be recapped by way of elaborate pantomime. They usually work, which on its own is humorous enough, but on the rare occasion they will finish a performance only for the intended audience to be like, I don't get it, resulting in the entire crew falling on their face. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a simple guy, but stuff like that always gets me. Plus, how many other games have Mario being physically held back from beating the snot out of a small child? I should not find that as funny as I do. The cast is lean, with your party capping out at 5 members, those being Mario, Mallow, Geno, Bowser, and Peach. That's not a spoiler, by the way, they're literally on the box. There aren't really any grand story arcs or major character development outside of maybe Mallow and Bowser himself, funny enough. Bowser's is more drip-fed throughout as he routinely performs mental gymnastics to not actually admit to wanting to help Mario, while Mallow's comes more in a large chunk in the second half of the game as his quest to find his parents come full circle after it was previously revealed that the fluffy white puffball is not, in fact, a tadpole, as he once thought. One stumble on the character front would have to be the villains. I like Smithy's minions well enough, but could have used a smidge more of Smithy himself. You don't even see the guy until just before the final battle, the second stage of which has some interesting implications that go wholly unexplored. I would have loved to have seen some cutaways to Smithy, maybe delving a bit into his motivation or watching him make plans or giving a glimpse of Weapon World. It wouldn't have to be much, but something to help better set him up prior to the final confrontation. Even with how charming the main cast is, the lack of depth and development could have proved tiring if it wasn't for the game's exceptional pacing. You are always pushing forward, and rarely are you ever in any one place for long. For the first 10 or so hours, every hour or two saw me visit 2 to 3 unique locations, including a new town with folks to talk to and gear to purchase, a dungeon filled with unfamiliar enemies and attack patterns, and it all culminating with a star piece in hand and Mario en route to his next destination. There are a couple instances where they change up this cadence. The first is with Star Hill, which kind of feels empty. There's no boss or anything, you just show up, go through a couple rooms, and get the star piece. There are a number of fallen stars you can interact with that lets you get a glimpse at various wishes from across the Mushroom Kingdom, lending proceedings a bit more weight as you get to see all of the wishes that will remain unfulfilled should Mario fail. I just wish the location as a whole didn't come off as a bit of an afterthought. Then there's the 6-star piece. Typically you travel to a town, learn of some issue plaguing it, go to a dungeon, get the star piece, and by doing so the issue in town is resolved. Thus, the narrative of each location is intertwined with Mario's own goal. The 6-star piece, however, doesn't follow this pattern. Instead, Mario travels to Nimbus Land only to have to deal with an ailing royal couple and a power-hungry royal aide. Resolving this does open the path to the next star piece, but has nothing directly to do with Mario's personal goals. I actually would have liked to have seen more of this. It shows that the world has problems other than just whatever's plaguing Mario at any given time. Lastly, there's the return trip to Bowser's Keep near the end of the game, which kind of drags down the pacing. Partway through, you're presented with 6 doors and are told that 2 lead to combat courses, 2 others lead to platforming courses, and the last 2 lead to puzzle courses. You have to complete 4 in order to proceed, and while the choose your own adventure nature could have been nice for those who struggle in one area or another, each course is overly long and none are particularly fun, especially the puzzle courses. I would have much preferred the segment be reworked into a linear path or just axed outright. The game does also mix things up with the occasional minigame, side quests, citizen to talk to, secrets to uncover, etc. It doesn't overwhelm you with side content, just peppering it in here and there for a bit of spice if you might be looking for a light distraction from the main story. That story took me roughly 16 hours to roll credits, and it honestly felt like half that length. I can't remember the last time a game flew by as quickly as Super Mario RPG did, and if you're left wanting just a bit more after all is said and done, there are some optional bosses as well as a casino to peruse in the post-game. Look at him, small, rotund, having the time of his life, overcome with joy as friends' accomplishments. Glorious. At the time of its original release, Super Mario RPG was a marked departure from both previous Mario titles and Square's own RPG output on a number of fronts, the most readily apparent being the presentation. Quite literally how the game world is presented as it uses an isometric point of view in a 3D environment, far cry from the plumber side-scrolling and top-down camera of Final Fantasy. Applying a more modern coat of paint to something that was both beloved and in some ways groundbreaking at the time runs a number of risks. The most obvious being that there is an unquantifiable level of charm to a lot of older games' presentation that doesn't always translate. For every Link's Awakening that knocks it out of the park, there's a brilliant diamond and shining pearl that, while adorable in its own right, lacks some of the soul present in the original's pixels. The folks over at Arte Piazza somehow managed to pull off this unenviable endeavor, keeping the flavor of the original while cranking up the environmental density and level of detail in a way that complements and enhances what made the SNES title so endearing. A large part of this has to do with the character animations as discussed in the narrative section. Many are holdovers or refinements of what was already there, and seeing things like Mario raise his doofy little arms to the sky in much greater detail punctuates the comedy, arguably even more so than it did on the SNES. There's also the environments, where the SNES release saw blank spaces around areas like towns. This remake paints these sections in with overflowing forests and vast hills in the distance, granting each location a sense of place and making the world feel more grand than the limited play space would suggest. Side note, this is something that I think is grossly undervalued in games. Not everything needs to be this ginormous, freely explorable open world. The suggestion of scale can be just as, if not more impactful than the actual scale itself. Okay, so in my outline for this review, under music, the first bullet point was just Yoko motherfucking Shimomura, which I think is a decent summation of my feelings on this game's OST. Like, I am definitely biased as a Shimomura fan, but even with that in mind, this soundtrack absolutely slaps. It is the perfect pair to the game's visuals and somehow seamlessly blends both Mario and RPG. I was thinking about it, and it's interesting because though Mario has never been stagnant with his musical palette, especially once the series moved into 3D, I can't help but think that some of the songs here had to have stood out at the time as being un-Mario-like, and yet completely fits in with what has become the modern Mario musical identity. I doubt anyone in 1996 was expecting a Pulp Fiction-esque jazz line to pop up in a Mario game, but Yoko Shimomura ran with it, and now we have the absolute banger that is, and that makes me booster. One minor issue I had with the soundscape is the lack of sound effects in some instances. I mostly noticed this in the beginning where there are some scenes that feel like they should have more sound. It might be the lack of any sort of typewriter sound when text appears on screen. Again, super minor and only really noticeable because of just how excellent the rest of the soundscape enhances the overall tone of the experience. As with most older RPGs, the gameplay in Super Mario RPG is split between the overworld and the battle screen. While this isn't usually worth pointing out, in this instance the overworld has a bit more going on than your standard RPG fare, in large part due to the developers harkening back to Mario's platforming roots. As is the case in the mainline series, the little man's got hops, which can be used for everything from exploration to jumping on beds or just standing on random citizens of the Mushroom Kingdom as they go about their daily lives while their would-be savior does his best impression of a hat. There's also some light platforming, mostly reserved for the second half of the game. The isometric perspective can make things difficult when these portions do occur, especially when trying to hop between beanstalks on your way up to Nimbus Land. It doesn't help when you don't realize that there's an invisible platform you can activate to make the jump actually manageable. My own observational deficiencies aside, the devs opted not to include anything too terribly tricky, and these sections pass by quickly enough to not overstay their welcome. That said, as fun as it is to hop, bebop, and skip around the Mushroom Kingdom, it's the combat where this game truly comes to life. For starters, they do something here that I'm a huge fan of, where in lieu of the traditional menu select system, they have each face button correspond to a different combat action. A for standard attacks, Y for special attacks, X for items, and B for other actions such as defending or switching out party members. I want to say the first time I saw this style of menu was in Persona 5, and while I'm certain it's present in other titles, the fact that something so intuitive isn't more of a standard despite having a successful example of it dating back to 1996 is a crime. While Super Mario RPG does utilize traditional turn-based combat, where it one-ups its peers is in how there is never a dull moment. This comes down to the action commands and the overall speed of combat encounters. Every attack Mario and crew performs has a timing element to it. If you just let them do their thing, they will do a decent amount of damage. Press A as an attack lands, however, and damage will be increased. Press A with perfect timing and not only will you receive a damage boost, but all other enemies will also take a small amount of damage. This holds true for defending against enemy attacks as well. Press A as an attack lands and you'll take reduced damage, do so with perfect timing, and you can negate damage outright. Successfully executing action commands also sees you building up the action gauge. Upon reaching 100%, you'll be able to perform a triple move. Only 3 party members can be active in battle at any given time. Mario's spot is locked in, but you are free to switch out the other 2 at will. Who you have on the field determines which triple move you have access to, ranging from an elemental bombardment that hits all foes to a group full heal. As for equipment, our heroes can equip 1 weapon, 1 piece of armor, and 1 accessory. Armor and accessories offer the usual stat boosts and resistances to status effects and debuffs, but where the fun really comes in is with the weapons. Each weapon has its own action command timing, so while upgrading does increase damage output, it also comes with a brief learning curve in order to maximize said output as you adjust to each unique pattern. This being an RPG, there is of course leveling. Stats are straightforward: HP, attack, defense, magic attack, and magic defense. In addition to the standard stat boost upon level up, you also get to choose an additional bonus. The options on offer are physical, attack and defense, HP, and magic attack and magic defense. This lets you nudge Mario and allies further into certain roles. Want Mallow to be a magic slinging glass cannon or Gino the swollest toy in town? You can. At designated levels, each character also unlocks new special moves, ranging from Mario's classic Fireball to a revive spell for Peach. Uses of these moves are governed by flower points, or FP. Your total FP is shared amongst all allies, making for an interesting push and pull as going all out on offense will affect your ability to heal as battles go on. While these special moves are no doubt impactful, each character could have used maybe 1 or 2 more. Each earns their final special at level 18. However, the level cap is 30, which I was able to reach with 2 party members by the end of the game, with the rest not far behind, leaving me with a dozen levels where the only thing I had to look forward to upon leveling up was a power increase. I mentioned the speed of battles earlier, and this stems primarily from just how incredibly easy the game is. I do want to note that this isn't a negative for me. I loved just how breezy of an experience it was, but I know that there are folks out there who like a challenge, and if that's your primary motivator when playing games, then this might not be for you. Even with limiters such as shared FP and a cap on how much of any one item you can hold, I never once struggled or even got a game over. I do think it's a testament to just how engaging the systems are that even with this lower difficulty, I was consistently engaged, eyes never glazing or mind wandering due to boredom. Battles typically only take 2 or 3 turns outside of bosses, and the action command system requires that you stay locked in at all times in order to maximize damage. Between that, the way new weapon timing throws you for a loop, and the occasional special enemy who are much stronger than their normal counterparts, you are constantly kept on your toes, and it all just makes for an experience that never felt dull or repetitive, and instead was a delight all the way through. Super Mario RPG is joy in cartridge form. It is silly and irreverent with fantastic pacing, pitch-perfect combat, banger music, and so many little details that I couldn't even begin to cover them all here. So do I recommend Super Mario RPG? Hell yeah, I do. Have you been watching for the last 15 minutes? I freaking adore this game in a way that I never thought I would. There are things in this nearly 30-year-old title that many games still struggle to get right today. I want more games like this. Hell, I want a sequel. Bring in Luigi and Wario and Pauline and my boy Waluigi. Go ham, make it weird. Maybe Smithy is back and mounting his forces and the crew have to go to Weapon World to help the citizens overthrow him. I don't know. I just want more from this weird little microcosm of the Mushroom Kingdom, and that's honestly the highest compliment I could possibly pay. Thank you so much for sticking through this video to the end. It genuinely means a lot that anyone would be interested in listening to me ramble. If you like what I do here, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and let me know your thoughts on Super Mario RPG in the comments. One reason I started this channel was to give myself an outlet for discussing the games I play, and it would mean the world to me if my videos could provide just such an outlet for others as well. With that said, please take care of yourselves, and next time I think we're going to be switching into a different gear.